And then he put the knife in my hand and he said, now you do it. And the moment that he put the knife in my hand, and he was right there to show me every move that I needed and explain why we were doing what we were doing, I have to say that changed my life. It changed my life because now I'm growing over 250 varieties of fruit on my property where I live. Catch my breath, I just ran all the way across the arena. My name is Randall White, and a little background before I get started. From South Alabama, and my nearest city to where we're living is Pensacola, Florida. So if you know where Pensacola, Florida is, that's the region that we live in, and we homestead there. I did 20 years in the Navy, retired, moved back home to the area that we currently are at now. And one of the things I wanted to do to kind of relax me from my high tempo of 20 years in the military is get back into gardening, and I just jumped right into that. It's what I'm really passionate about, is growing and propagating fruit and vegetables and helping others understand what you can do to help sustain yourself. I don't know if I really want to say this, but how many believe that the United States is going to be here and exactly functioning as it is right now 20, 30 years from now? I don't know, right? We all need to be a little bit prepared. And so one of the things that I do is I kind of go around and teach everybody on establishing an orchard in your backyard, because an orchard is going to help feed your family. If people come in and do whatever they do to your place, at least you've got fruit that will come back every year and provide you food. All right, so why do we do grafting? And just to let you know, this is interactive. I'll come over and get personal with you guys. One of the things whenever I'm teaching a grafting class is I say, come by and see me. Let's put the knife in your hand. Let's put the twigs in your hand. And let's teach you how to do it. The way I got into grafting was, I got into fig collecting. And I went and saw one of my friends, Herschel, down in Georgia, which has the largest private citrus collection probably in the entire world. And now he has a greenhouse that's 3.5 acres, and he propagates citrus for a living. But he wasn't propagating citrus whenever I met him. And I said, Herschel, I said, you do grafting as a profession. I always wanted to learn how to do grafting. He goes, well, come on. So he opened up his refrigerator, and he pulled out a fig twig, and he walked out to his fig tree, and he said, now watch this. And he explained what he was doing. And then he put the knife in my hand and he said, now you do it. And the moment that he put the knife in my hand, and he was right there to show me every move that I needed and explain why we were doing what we were doing, I have to say that changed my life. It changed my life because now I'm growing over 250 varieties of fruit on my property where I live. And most of those are grafted onto trees. I have an apple tree that has 10 varieties of apple growing on one tree. I have a pear tree that is growing 10 varieties of pear on one tree. Most of America lives in suburbia. And so you have a backyard that's less than an acre. That's America that we live in today. And some of those people are realizing what's going on in the environment that we're in, and it gets kind of scary and concerning, and they want to start growing a little bit of fruit because they believe that our food chain is being poisoned. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad to see that we all agree that. And if you can grow your own fruit, you know what you're spraying, you know what you're fertilizing with, you can control that. And that's pretty important. So, back to suburbia. Thank you, baby. People living in the backyard, they want to grow all these different varieties of fruit, but their backyard is as big as this section right here, right? And last week I was down in Ocala, Florida, and I was speaking at an event down there, and I asked the question, I'm like, how many people are living on less than an acre? Okay, there's a few of you here. Down there, living in Florida, there were a lot more hands that went up. That yes, those people are living in a less than an acre. And my speak down there was establishing a backyard orchard, which goes kind of hand in hand with what we're talking about here today with grafting. And my question to them was, what constitutes a backyard orchard? And so I Googled that question as I didn't know. And what constitutes a backyard orchard is growing 5 fruit trees. That's the agreed average of having a backyard orchard. You can put that in the corner of your yard, still have your whole entire yard, and you'll still be growing, different varieties of stuff. So that's what we do with grafting. We utilize grafting. Say, if I want to grow 5 varieties of apples, but I don't have room for 5 trees, I can put 5 varieties of apple on one tree and get all those different flavors, profiles, and extended harvest, an early variety, a mid-season variety, a late variety, all on one tree, good pollination. And so we're doing that with grafting. Now you can graft multiple different types of fruit, not just apples. I speak apples because I really like talking about grafting apples. I graft several hundred apple trees a year. Randall, you're from South Alabama. What are you doing talking about apples? You can't grow apples down there. And for the most part, you're right. And as a side note, last year, I heard about a guy down in Orlando, Florida, that was growing all the northern varieties in his backyard, the size of this area right here, and he was growing 100 varieties of apples and getting fruits in Orlando. So if you want to see more about that story, go on my YouTube, Flomaton Famous. I went down there just to interview him and what he was doing to make that happen. University of Florida found out what he was doing, reached out to him. He was already a college professor. Reached out to him and offered him a doctorate degree in horticulture just because of what he was doing in his own backyard. So now he's getting ready to graduate with a horticulture doctorate degree. So I thought that was pretty incredible. I'm glad I went down there and interviewed him and got a story. I wrote this note 3 years ago. All right, so what are the reasons that we do grafting? One of the reasons you do grafting is, one, you can propagate all these different trees. Like if you want to start a little backyard nursery and you want to get all these different varieties out to people in your area. The guy I talked about in Orlando is a licensed backyard nursery in his backyard, and he is selling hundreds and hundreds of apple trees in his little subdivision and getting them out into to people in his area. So that's one of the things we do with grafting is you can take one variety, you can put it on hundreds of rootstock, propagate it, and sell it. So you can make money off of it. Another reason that we get into grafting, we do grafting, is to save space. Like I said earlier, what if we do want to grow 10 varieties of apple on one tree? It's just Michelle and I that even eat the apples that are in our yard. We can't eat 5 apple trees. She's precious. She and I can't eat 5 apple trees worth of apples, but I would love to taste the rainbow of apples that there are out there and not have to deal with all the different amounts of fruit if I didn't feel like processing that fruit, putting it up, or giving it away. So that's another benefit of grafting is you get a wide variety of apples all on one tree. I spoke earlier that whenever you're doing grafting, you can put an early variety on there. Say where we live, we can start getting apples as early as June. We can get a July variety. We can go as late as August and September. And so we can put all those varieties on one tree, and we can extend our harvest and get a larger harvest just off of doing grafting. This is all why we are doing grafting. The talk of grafting is here. If you are interested in getting your hands on some twigs and a knife to do some grafting, come see me immediately after the talk. That is a whole different thing, and we'll put a knife in your hand, and we'll put the twigs in your hand, and we'll teach you how to graft so that you can be empowered to go home and do your own propagations. Good morning. Everybody all right? Everybody awake? Have coffee?
Is there special equipment required?
Special equipment required as far as grafting. You could do it with a pocket knife. You could do it with just a box blade. And essentially, you could do grafting with just that simple little tool. I actually got a grafting knife for Christmas. I don't actually have my grafting knife in here, so I left it in the truck. I always keep it in my pocket. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned that your neighbor's growing northern varieties of apples. Usually, from the outside world, it looks like the chill hours are the limiting factor to those northern varieties. Does that seem to be the case whenever you're grafting to a different rootstock, or like how is he able to achieve that? Basically?
The short answer is he manipulates those trees into thinking that they go dormant. So some apple trees require 1,000 chill hours, and a chill hour, if you're not familiar, is the temperature range between 32 degrees and 45 degrees. Whatever amount of time a tree spends in that range, that's called a chill hour. In order for him to grow those fruit trees down in Florida, some of those trees require 1,000 chill hours, where in Orlando, he might get 100 chill hours for the winter, and it's over with, and trees are ready to go again. So what he's doing is he's plucking leaves, but he's also working with the day length. And as trees are starting to want to go dormant, he's helping them go dormant and help them achieve their chill hours. And then therefore he's getting fruit.
Okay.
Yeah. So appreciate the
I
question.
got more questions if you want them. I got more questions.
You know what? This is, like I said earlier, this is an interactive group. If you've got a question, please raise your hand. I'll call on you. Yes, sir, in the back.
So the way you're describing it all, it sounds like it's just straightforward and simple. And the picture I'm getting in my head, what you're describing, especially when I saw you bringing in the twigs and the box and everything, is that you have a stem, some sort of twig or something, and you're exposing the core, and then I assume you probably have to expose the inside of whatever you're going to graft it to, and then bind it, and then just let it grow together somehow.
That's essentially what grafting is surgically taking a rootstock in a scion wood, and you're doing wood plant surgery, and you're putting those together, and you're causing things to line up so that they'll take off and they'll start growing. And that's the kind of stuff that whenever I'm face to face with you, that we will talk about, and I will point out the cambium layer that you have to line up, which is a certain little growth ring. And if you don't line those two growth rings up, that graft is going to fail. So if I can get, front and center with you, and as you are doing it, I'll explain to you what to look for. I appreciate the question. Yes, ma'am, right next.
Do the family of trees matter? I've heard it does,
Yes.
and I've heard that it doesn't.
True. Some people will say that you can put an apple onto a pear because generally it's in the same type of family. I don't prefer it. They don't do well together. But some people are grafting different varieties of fruit onto quince. So there are crossovers that you can use. So yes, correct. But if you can take an apple and graft it to an apple rootstock, it will do a whole lot better. So right behind you is another gentleman.
I have 4 trees that are grown from seed, and they're about 3 years old. Where do I get another graft of a different variety to graft to it?
Are you on Facebook?
No.
Do you have the internet?
Yes.
Okay, there's a website called Etsy, and there are people on there that will open up their backyards and they'll take cuttings of different fruits and varieties and they'll put it on Etsy, and you can just go right on Etsy website and you can find almost everything you're looking for. eBay, people put stuff on eBay. That's actually part of my speech, is where to find scion wood, so thank you for asking that. If you just get on websites like that, there's trade groups so that people they exchange scion woods, and they'll have gatherings. You can get together out in California. I know that they have a scion exchange day where people like us get together and exchange plant material.
Is it okay if we get it grown from seed that I get from Kroger?
If you grow that seed out of the apple from Kroger and it comes up, you will get a seedling rootstock. And if you graft onto that, you'll get a root system that will go 20 feet in the dirt, spread out, and you'll get a tree 30, 40 foot high because it's grafted onto that seedling rootstock that has the propensity to make a full-size tree. Even though you take Fuji apple and you put onto that seedling, that rootstock says, I am going to be a full-size tree, and it'll take off and it'll be a full-size tree.
When you're figuring out what to graft to a rootstock, what are some of the factors that you include? Earlier you mentioned like early harvest, mid-harvest, late harvest. Are there any other factors you?
Absolutely, and there are different universities that make different rootstocks, and let's pick on apples. We'll stick on the apple subject. It's kind of relevant for this area, right? There's a whole university, Geneva. All they do is they research rootstock, they breed rootstock against nematodes for sandy soil, for wet areas, for dry areas. So all these different factors, and even growth size. Like if you get a Geneva Series 41 rootstock, that's going to make a tree that's no more than 6-7 foot high at the most. And so you're going to have a super dwarfing tree just because of the rootstock that's grafted onto. Whereas if you get a Malus 111 rootstock, you may get a 15-foot tree out of that. And like the gentleman said earlier, if he plants a seed and gets a seedling, he grafts onto that, he's going to get a 40-foot tree out of that. Yes, ma'am?
The grafting techniques, do they span across the different tree types, or would you use a certain technique for apples, a certain technique for citrus?
Okay, so what technique do I use based on what it is I'm trying to graft? Apple is very easy. So I use typically a whip and tongue, a clef, are my two favorite types to use. Citrus, I think the defining factor is what different types depends on what season or what it is you're looking for. Like if you want to graft persimmon, there's a finite little window that you can do persimmon that it'll take. You have to wait till that rootstock starts pushing growth and that leaf is about the size of a mouse's ear. That's when you do your grafting. Gets any bigger than that, the chances of a successful graft go down. If you do it before then, the chances of successful graft go down. If you want to do citrus, my friend that taught me how to do grafting, he bends his trees over to where all the leaf growth is down, and he grafts right in the top of that bend, a little bud graft. And so that's the technique he uses to propagate citrus. But generally, you can do most all your grafting with as simple as a cleft graft or a whip and tongue, and those are the easiest styles. So it's not so much about the style, is I have a whole book. When I decided that I was going to travel around and teach people how to do grafting, I bought a book, a grafter's handbook, and I paid $100 for this book. And it has a whole array of different plants, different styles, different techniques, different windows. So each type of different plant has a certain different style and time frame that you're looking for. So back to your question also about the different rootstocks. I mentioned, wet soils, dry soils. So there are different rootstocks that are bred for the different type of dirt that you're going to be growing in. So you need to read on what rootstock is best for your area and then graft onto that. So a rootstock is bred to best produce in the dirt that you're going to be growing in. So it's resistant to some stuff, and it favors some different stuff. So you need to select based according to that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I have a huge giant black walnut tree, and I want those types of nuts. I'm having a hard time finding nuts in my zone that don't die in the winter, or like when we have really big trees or, if I wanted to graft like almond or hazelnut, could I do that onto the walnut, or is it the same thing as pears and apples?
I don't think that you can cross over like hazelnut and walnut. I understand it's, pretty similar. Let me look at my book. So come by and see me after the talk. We'll look in the book and see what the book says.
Okay.
So I have the book just for that reason. I don't typically graft nut trees, but I've grafted pecan and pecan. What's the correct way to say it in Kentucky? Pecan?
Yes, that's what we're calling it now.
Yeah. All right, also at my desk, whenever you come by and you want to learn how to do grafting, I got all the different tools. The gentleman asked what tool do we use to graft with, and I've got grafting shears that I've recently discovered, because last year I decided I wanted to graft 500 root stock, and just taking the knife and cutting them and putting them together was taking about 1 minute too long than I thought it should take. So I bought some grafting shears, and it greatly increased the amount of speed that I do my grafting by. So there are different tools that I got, and the one that I get most questions about is the Omega tool. If you look on like Amazon, if you look up grafting, there's this neat little tool on there that will make all these different shapes on the cuts. And the most popular is the Omega shape, which is what the tool's named after. And you can grab that, you can get that little tool for like $10 on Amazon. And that is probably one of the very first things that I did whenever I decided I was going to start doing grafting, is I went on Amazon and I bought that $10 tool. And a lot of people will poo-poo it. They say, do not do this tool, it's crap. And I kind of went back and forth, and I've decided ultimately, if you wanted to get into grafting and you have an interest in that tool, but you don't have the confidence of picking up those sticks and making it happen with just a standard knife or a razor, buy the tools. Help build your confidence that you can do this, and then once you see that graft union start growing, you'll do a few. I did maybe 10 grafts, and I was like, okay, I think I got it. I understand the principles. And I put the tool down, I got my grafting knife, and then I haven't put the grafting knife down. That's what I prefer to use. It's just the grafting knife. So that's my preferred tool. How are we doing on time? Yes, sir, in the back?
So my understanding with apple trees, because I was wanting to plant a couple, and my understanding is you have to have more than one in different varieties for them to produce fruit.
Correct.
If you're grafting, does that eliminate the need for the second one? If you graft ones on there, or do you still need two?
So cross-pollination is one of the benefits of being able to do grafting. So you're correct, you will need another variety outside of the one variety that you're wanting to grow so you get proper cross-pollination. I have shell apple, which is the one that grows very well in my area, and it is said to be self-fruitful. And I don't get seeds in my apples if it's not pollinated, but it will set fruit. My one tree, I may get 40 fruit off of that one tree if I don't have a pollinator. But if I have a pollinator, I can get several hundred fruit off of that tree. It greatly increases the amount of fruit that I'm going to get. Yes, sir.
And one more question. So when you graft different varieties, does that increase the yield you get from a tree, or does a tree just going to produce the same amount or just different varieties of that?
Well, like I said, once you cross-pollinate that fruit, it's going to set more fruit. So therefore, you're going to get more fruit if you have cross-pollination. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What are you looking at on sign-on wood when you harvest it?
That's a great question.
Or dormant,
Okay, so what am I looking for when I'm harvesting scion wood? I wait till the dead of winter down in South Alabama. That's about 2 weeks out of the year, and that's in January. So in January, I go to my apple tree and I put my ladder up and I go up, and what I'm collecting is I'm collecting wood that grew this year, this previous year's wood, and it's usually 6 to 8 inches. I might get 12 inches on some of my trees, and I harvest that wood and I put it in a bag, and it's dormant, has no leaves. I put it in the bag and I wait for the propagation season to come around. And like I kind of said earlier, and I didn't fully say this, propagation of apple, generally, it's really easy, and you can start propagating just before it starts pushing growth. So I'll get my rootstock ordered, from up in Washington. And when they mail it to me, it's usually about the time that I request them when to send me my rootstock. And about the time I receive it, I open up the bag and I just start going to town. It's fully dormant. My scion wood's fully dormant. I do my grafts, I pot them up, I put them outside, and in about 2 or 3 weeks, I start seeing growth coming out. So if you can graft right as it's getting ready to start pushing growth, that's when you're gonna have the best luck with apples. Yes, sir.
When you put it in that bag, where you put it in that bag? You said you put your soya salt in that.
In a Ziploc bag, in my refrigerator.
With what? Anything else?
Some people will put a wet, damp towel to keep the humidity, but if you have a Ziploc bag full of scion wood, it's gonna have enough moisture in that bag, it's gonna stay at 100% humidity. And actually, I still have scion wood in my refrigerator that I didn't use, that's still good. Sorry.
How many other varieties does that method apply to? Where you're harvesting and grafting right before spring starts pushing?
All your deciduous woods are generally that way. So that means if that tree naturally loses its leaves in the fall and starts putting on new growth in the winter, that tree is deciduous. And most of your deciduous wood, you're going to harvest your scion wood while it's dormant. Now, if you start getting down in where I'm living and further south, you have avocado, which never goes dormant and you don't want it to go dormant. You do your propagation during the active growing season. So you'll harvest scion wood and immediately go over and propagate avocado. So if you don't have a deciduous plant, you harvest your scion and you go to it. My friend that taught me, Herschel, he orders his budwood from California from the state, verified virus-free, clean of any kind of disease. He tells them, just stuff it in an envelope and send it to me. And they do the next day mail. And so the next day he gets his budwood in the mail. And it's still active. It's not dried out or anything. Just stuff it in a bag, put it in the mail and send it to him. And he gets it, and he puts it in his refrigerator, and he pulls it out and uses it per stick at a time as he's grafting. That he kind of keeps in the refrigerator, keep 100% humidity on it. But, yeah.
Out of all 250 varieties, what are your top 3 favorites?
Apples, the shell apple is probably one of my favorites. I have a citrus that I really like, Sharanui. And I want to speak about this citrus in case you have a greenhouse that you can grow citrus in. The Sharanui, if you go to Walmart, there's a certain time of the year, usually around January, you'll see Sumo Orange. Have you ever seen Sumo Orange in the grocery store? Sumo Orange is a copyrighted name, but the name of that fruit is called Sharanui, and it's the size of a navel. It is meaty like a navel orange, but it's the highest sugar content of any fruit out there. And I had a friend that says, Randall, he goes, have you ever tasted the Sumo Orange? I'm like, no, I haven't. He goes, go over to Whole Foods, they got them right now. You've got to taste this. I'm like, okay, so I took off work on lunch break, went over there, picked one up, sat in the parking lot, I cut it open. I immediately called him like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever eaten in my entire life. And so that orange happens to be my favorite. Man, I can't rave enough about that. It does not taste like any citrus you ever had before. So that's probably my favorite. Outside of that, my favorite fruit to grow is figs. I'm a fig tree collector, enthusiast. There are thousands of varieties of figs. I'm growing currently 140 variety, and I have some of those varieties with me today. If you like figs, you're interested in figs, you're a fig collector, you want to know more about figs, come see me. And most of my prices are not based on the size of my trees that I have for sale, but they're based on how good that fruit is. So the more that fruit costs, the more that fruit is going for in the market. And I'm telling you, I can sell in all my trees here today much cheaper than you can buy them anywhere else.
Okay, so, sorry.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
How big are the trees and can you plant them right now?
All right, my figs?
Yeah.
All right, so I got them anywhere from this tall, and then I've got them up in the buckets like this. You're selecting the area here, I would preserve it somewhere through the winter and then plant it out in the spring. And a lot of people in this area that are fig collectors will just grow them in buckets for the life of the fig tree, and then move them into their garage through the winter and keep them dormant through the winter. Yes, sir.
I'm Indiana, Homestead, Chicago Hardy, 30-year trees, I've been chopping. And wait till it goes to 20, I start chopping. Take my cuttings, make more big trees out of it. But then I put a bucket over it, just roll it in it, and then I just pile a bunch of, wood chips on top.
Right.
So it's doing good, it's got good root systems, it's up 8 feet tall, times like right now, or whatever.
Right.
That seemed like the right way to.
That's right, that's correct. And, are you getting figs every year?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're doing everything just like you're supposed to be doing it. Yeah, some people will say, Randall, I've had this fig tree for years, I'm never getting figs off of it. And my first question is, what are you feeding it? You know, and they were like, well, I'm feeding it, you know, triple 13 or something like that, something with a high nitrogen. And of course, you're gonna get a lot of growth, and then not many pigs after that. And that's fine if you wanna initially get it up out of the ground with a high nitrogen fertilizer, whether it be a manure or something like that. But if you want to cause that to turn around and set fruit, then you need to feed it something that's lower in nitrogen and higher in phosphorus and potassium. And that will cause it to go over fruit. One more time?
Yeah. Feed mine with good compost.
Good compost.
Shows how they-
Yeah. If you just feed it compost, it's gonna do its thing. Yeah, it'll go through all the cycles. But if you're having a hard time and you really need to manipulate it, there's some things you can do. In the back, yes, sir.
I'm not gonna use the correct terminology, but the fake, it seems like it sets fruit like a Brussels sprout, or sends it all. So,
It's actually a reverse flower. A fig is a flower, but the bloom is on the inside. If you open it up, there's all your flower parts are on the inside of a fig.
so if I was to top that fig and sacrifice the upper figs, they never seem to come right anyway, will that speed up the lower figs for ripening?
It will. And another thing that you can do is right before a frost comes, you're gonna lose all your figs. If you take a drop of oil and you put it on the eye of the fig, it'll also cause that fig to hurry up and ripen up also. That's just another little trick of the trade. Any questions? Yes, sir?
Are you for hire for consultation?
I probably am. I've never been asked that before, but you can just come talk to me. All right. Let's talk about interstem grafting. We mentioned earlier that some people are choosing their rootstock like a G41 rootstock because they want to keep a smaller tree in their smaller yard and they don't have room for a 40-foot tree. I ran into a problem. We had Hurricane Sally blow through our area, and one of my apple trees was on M111, which is a sprawling root, and it doesn't go down in the dirt more than just a few inches. So when the hurricane come through, my apple tree laid over in the ground and it killed it. I said, well, what can I do? I said, I really need a rootstock like a seedling that's going to send a taproot down into the ground. If that tree had a taproot, a good anchored root system, it wouldn't have blew over. It would have been just fine with the 60-mile-an-hour winds that we got from that little hurricane. And then I started doing a little research. I said, well, what's this interstem grafting thing? So whenever I order my G41, my dwarfing rootstock, and I cut the top of it off in order to put my scion wood on there, if I save 6 to 8 inches of that I cut off of there, I can go over to my seedling rootstock that wants to be a 40-foot tree, and I can graft that interstem or that little cutoff right on top of that seedling. So now I have a big root system. I have a super dwarfing root system that I've grafted on top of that. And then on top of that, I put my scion wood. I have now super dwarfed a seedling rootstock. And I was like, that's kind of amazing. Yeah, and so people have to do a little different techniques on that. They will graft the inner stem onto their seedling. They'll grow that for a month, and they'll turn around and graft scion wood to put their variety on top of it. And I've talked to some propagators that'll just do it all at one time, and it works. So that's one of the techniques, inner stem grafting, you know, to achieve what it is that you're looking to achieve. And I thought that was really cool. So have I done inner stem grafting? I have not. All right, any more questions? Yes, sir, Mateo.
Do you have a source that you would recommend for buying grafting supplies?
I don't. I buy a lot of the stuff on, I dare say, Amazon. Just because it's a one-stop shop. I can buy my grafting knife for $35. I can buy my grafting tape on there for $10. And really, that's the only two supplies you need for grafting. So if you want to graft an entire orchard of apples, if you spend $1 a tree on your rootstock, you buy your knife, your grafting tape, and if you have a friend that'll give you, you know, however many scion woods you need off of his tree that you like, you can graft an entire apple orchard for $100. So that's another way that I grafted. Yeah, I mentioned I have 250 variety of fruit trees that I'm growing, and a lot of those I just ordered a bucket full of rootstock, and I did the grafting myself, got it established, boom, go out, plant it, and off it is. You know, off it goes to the races. I have an entire apple orchard and pear orchard, you know, for under $100. Yes, sir?
Do you have any experience grafting to like a scion to a rootstock, growing that tree for like an extended period of time, and then plucking it up and selling the bare root?
Yes, that's pretty common in the industry, in the apple industry.
At what point do you pull that tree out of the ground, and or is there like a special hilling technique?
When do I bare root my trees?
Yeah.
When the tree is fully dormant, asleep, and all the sugars have come out of the leaves and back down into that root, and that root holds all the life of that tree.
Is there a specific soil composition you're looking for so you do like less damage to the roots when you pluck
The
it up?
looser the soil, the better you're gonna be. If your goal is to sell bare root trees like a sawdust, a compost, you know, something that's not gonna pack together like a clay, do that. And there's another thing called stool layering. If you wanna propagate your own rootstock, I went on a website called, I'm drawing it right now. Anyway, there's a website out there. Come see me, I'll look it up. That they graft, they sell all your grafting supplies, they sell rootstock individually, they sell scion wood individually. And so whenever I was first starting to dip my toe into this, I went on that website and I ordered 5 apple rootstock, and I planted it in the ground. And if you cut it off and you heal it up, dirt around it, and it'll start sending up these side sprouts. Those side sprouts will start setting roots. And then you can pull the dirt away and then start snipping those off. Then you are growing your own rootstock. You can put that over into a bucket. So one tree could give you 10 trees within a year. And then the following year, give you 10 more trees. The following year, give you 10 more trees. So you could be a perpetual rootstock grower of your own rootstock that way. Yes, sir.
Quick question, never grafted. So when you do grafting, does it make the overall fruit or your product, does it make it more disease resistant, less disease resistant, or does it change it?
There is some crossover. Also, rootstock will also, depending on the variety of rootstock you're growing, will change the flavor of your fruit a little bit also. So disease resistant in the scion wood itself. So if you have a rootstock that is resistant to fire blight, it's going to also push that fire blight resistant into that scion wood and give it a little bit of hardness. But the correct answer is no. The real answer is you'll see some of the stuff push up and cross over.
Well, I didn't know that there was, certain things you would try to make one part weaker or the other maybe stronger. There's always that balance. So,
Some kind of balance.
yeah, I was just curious whether, for your niche, what your
textbook answer is no, but the practical backyard orchardist will say no. Yeah. Yes, sir.
When you're cutting your rootstock, the rootstock orchard part, when you're cutting the rootstock and you're cutting it up, are you cutting that after the tree's gone dormant?
You can do this during the active growing season, but you run a risk that you can kill it if you're totally cutting it back while it's actively growing. And the sugars are up, and that thing is in full growth, and then you come along and cut it. You're gonna affect the rate of growth of that.
And how mature are you letting that tree get before you coppice it?
You can do it the very first year. Like if you buy a rootstock of an apple and you put it in the ground, and that year when it goes dormant, you cut that, heal it up. The next year those come up, start harvesting them, pull your dirt back over. Yeah, you're not going to have a tree that's just going to thrive and take off and grow bigger and bigger every year because you're taking the vitality out of that rooting system. But you can harvest those trees off of that. So there's a balance. Any other questions? All right, guys. I appreciate it. I think we're actually over time by 5 minutes. You've been great. Thanks.